Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome way for you to rub elbows with your favorite podcast hosts here on the Sports History Network, while at the same time rooting for your hometown team this upcoming NFL season. You've been hearing all about our partner, Tailgate Fantasy, the past few weeks. Well, dig on this. Tailgate created a special Sports History Network league for our listeners, so we can put the word fan back into fantasy football together. It's free to join, and if you do so before the season kicks off, you'll automatically be entered into a drawing for a free t-shirt from one of our other partners, Home Field Apparel. It's a win-win-win! So hurry up today and head to sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate for all the details. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we will go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its Memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises. We're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 140-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the web at GridironGreatsMagazine.com. We're sponsored in part by MSB Sports Cards. Check out their website for one of the largest selections of football cards and memorabilia on the web at MSBSportsCards.com. And we're also sponsored in part by BST Auctions. Check out their website and their upcoming auction at BSTAuctions.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. Yes, he's back. He is a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Larger. He hails from Portland, Oregon. Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
Good to be back, Captain. Very good to be back.
Joe, I heard you were passing out Seattle Seahawk football cards in Australia when you were down there last month. I heard that was the rumor. I had a few people call me and ask me about it, and I said I couldn't confirm or deny that. But I heard you had a nice time down there. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would have got some odd looks handing that out. Footy, American football. Anyway. But, yeah, spent a month down in Australia. It's just one of those things that my wife and I wanted to do, and, we've been saving up for it, and finally just decided to, today is yesterday's tomorrow, and pulled the trigger. So, yeah.
Sounds great. Well, my vacation
got a chance.
Couldn't compare to that.
Exactly.
We just went to Aruba for 6 days and we came home. But Australia is a very, very interesting country. I know my daughter was down there for a couple of months this year, doing some work down there, and she said it was a very, very interesting country.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, you're back. Welcome back. And this show today, we're going to be recapping the year of 2017. And again, I want to mention to our listening audience, especially those people listening for the first time, the podcast show started in December of 2011, and we ran 48 shows from 2011 to 2014 on the old Leatherheads of the Gridiron Podcasting Network. And I took a couple-year break revamping the podcast, and we restarted it here in 2017 with Joe continuing to be my co-host with several guest co-hosts in between because of Joe's being booked for those days. But in any event, this is our 18th podcast of the year. Next year for 2018, we'll be back stronger than ever. We're going to be hopefully running at least 24 podcasts, including one live one from the National in Cleveland in 2018. So I like to start by talking and doing a little recap of the guests we had on each show and some of the thoughts and ideas and memories we had of 2017 and some future views of 2018. One of the first shows we had was talking about with John Spano, who handled and is handling the liquidation on BST Auctions of the Mike Blaisdell collection. And it was a good show to start off our podcast season with, because as anyone knows, Mike, by far and wide, has one of the most incredible football card and memorabilia collections in the country. And, Joe, what were your thoughts, A, coming back on the podcast, and B, a show like that for our first show?
Yep, January of 17. And, Mike Blaisdell, as you mentioned, he's one of those guys whose face is on the Mount Rushmore of football collectors. We all know him. He's a friend, a personal friend, along with John Spano. And, and it's when somebody makes it to the top of the mountain, they ring the bell. They look around a little bit with their collection, and then they descend. And we all get it. People's lives change. Kids go on to college. You retire, et cetera. And at some point, you become a little stir crazy with their collection. And we totally get it. Mike is just one of those collectors. My biggest fear with him moving on from his collection is that, all of that mass of knowledge that's up in that big misshapen noggin of his would, that he would kind of disappear from the chat rooms and stuff that we're so used to seeing him on. And you can't recreate that knowledge. He's been doing it since I was in 8th grade. He's been in the hobby. You can't recreate that. That was my biggest fear. When Mike told me he was going to sell a lot of his collection.
Well, it's been my experience over the years that I've seen a couple bigger, nothing like Mike's collection though, go on the market and the collection leaves the market. And I've somehow run into them at a show or whatever, or they call out of the blue type of thing. And I agree with you. It is kind of scary that a collector of that magnitude with his or her knowledge actually just leaves the hobby and that's it. And I'm real happy for Mike that he is still staying active. And Mike still has a few items in his collection he's keeping. And at the same time, he's still sharing the knowledge of what he has and what he knows. And again, Mike and I go back a long, long time, back to our SCD days back in the 80s. And, we've seen a lot of different changes in the hobby, a lot of different movements in the hobby. And I'm very, very happy Mike went out on his own terms. And I think that's an important aspect of collecting. I know of several collectors who passed unexpectedly or quickly or really never came to terms with what's going to happen to the collection after I pass. And I'm always happy for any collector who does it on his or her own terms. Mike did it on his terms, and I'm pleased with that, to say the least.
Yeah, Mike assured us. He came onto the show a couple programs later. Our first show back in January of 17, John Spano was our first guest, and he talked about the collection and some of the things coming up in the auction. And Mike was a guest later on, and he assured us he's still going to be around in the hobby. You and I still see him chatting on boards. He's still there. I've got his cell phone number. If I ever had a question, I'd give him a jingle.
And to me, that is an important aspect that stay active somehow, somewhere with the hobby type of situation, especially when your collection goes. I think it's very, very critical. The just as an aside, and I thought about it when I was looking at the script for today. Several issues back in Gridiron Greats, we had a New York Giants super collector who unexpectedly passed very, very early in life, and he basically left his collection to his family. And I know the family donated some of the collection to the Giants, and I interviewing the family and talking about the collection and so on and so forth, I really felt bad about the whole situation because it was it was a shock to say the least. But then again, you got people who are in the family who are non-collectors. They have no clue what to do. You know what I mean? And I literally get that call once a month from somebody or an email from somebody. Wow. Can you help me with what I have? I don't know what it is, blah, 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 type of situation.
Wow.
I donate it. And it's tough. It's a tough situation to be involved in.
Wow, I had no idea. Huh.
So
yeah, I mean, it
is what it is. Congratulations to Mike for what he accomplished in the hobby, and congratulations for a very, very successful auction, spreading those items to other collectors in the football world, to say the least.
And I was privileged enough to pick up a couple of items. Out of Mike's collection, a couple Red Grange cards, it's just Mike when we had him on as a guest, he talked about some of his favorite things and, how rare some of them were. And it gave me a lot of insight into what he focused on and what he considered rare. It was great.
Right. It was. And I do know people like yourself and several other big collectors who, like Jeff Payne, who picked up a few items for their collections from the Mike Boysdale collection. And I do say this: we're one hobby where we just lack showing that thread of where our items come from, and we should really start looking at, especially with football, the major collectors who've impacted the hobby. And if you do get an item from them, they really need to be noted. Not so much for being number one on a graded card site or whatever, but actually being involved in the hobby as long as they have, so on and so forth. So it is a good.
That's a good point.
Province to have for the collector at the same time.
That's a very good point. I know the provenance of quite a few of my cards. I mean, obviously the Blaisdell ones I picked up. My anonymous, my John Dunlop from the 1894 Mayo set, I picked up at the Dreyer, collection, and I've been to the Dreyer Museum a couple times, and gawked at the breadth of their collection, and I never imagined one day that the Dryers would sell their collection and I would own, that card I was looking at through the glass cases, and when they split up their collection. I mean, there were probably 3 or 4 things like I have to have that, and I was able to go out and get them. So I mean, I definitely know the provenance of quite a few of my the cards, my higher end cards.
Right. Well, that's good. That's what you need to know. All right, looking at our second point of our show today, the inevitable card trimming issues, and everybody knows how I feel about that. Joe, you're more of an expert than me on card trimming, thoughts, ideas, problems.
Yeah, this topic came up after I wrote an article, for our Gridiron Greats about the trimming, the love affair between Card Doctors and the 1948 Leaf set. 1948 Leaf is one of the cornerstones of any football collector's, collection. It's got the majority of our Hall of Fame rookie cards in it. Sid Luckman, Sammy Baugh, Bobby Lane, Doak Walker. I mean, you can go on and on. And it's because of the odd sizes of it, and I switched to millimeters to metric, for this one because it's so much easier to measure. But, just the odd variations. I mean, a card can be between, 55 and 60 millimeters on the short side and 60 to 70 millimeters on the long side. That's quite a percentage. So I mean, I've been collecting that set in particular for over a decade, for probably 13 years. It's been the set that I immerse myself into. Digitally calipering each card I get, labeling, measuring, the variations, soaking cards. It's one of those sets, and And just, probably about 4 years ago, I just started seeing PSA slip a lot of trimmed, very obviously trimmed cards through the doors and slabbing them. And it was just something I felt like I had to pop smoke on and just let people know that, just because a card's slabbed doesn't mean it's authentic and hasn't been altered.
Right. And again, that just reiterates my distrust for the whole graded card market. Again, anybody who listens to the podcast or knows me knows my feelings on graded cards.
Yes.
And here's a really good example of, okay, so we supposedly have experts that are grading our cards, and I'd say that with a question mark sometimes. And here's an excellent example of a massive problem in the 48 leaf set. And is the problem actually really being addressed? And B, how long is it going to go on for? And C, how ridiculous is it that these card doctors really feel, justified in doing what they're doing? I mean, besides the ethics of it, their names to me are mud in the hobby, and it's horrible. It's really horrible. And I really think if the hobby was, patrolling itself a little more carefully, this would not be an issue and we wouldn't be talking about it right now. It would have been resolved and would have been taken care of, and that would have been it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that I see as a major problem right now. So,
where there's money to be made, I guess there will always be.
Oh yeah.
Those crappy people who are out there trying to make it. I mean,
and to me, it bothers me after all these years of being in the hobby. I still got to hear stuff like this going on. Besides, wax packs that get resealed. You name it. It's been done in the hobby. And for what? What's the purpose? Yeah, you're right. It's money to be made. So okay, let me rip off the unsuspecting person, and that's it type of situation. And I think to me, it was much more prevalent in the late 80s, early 90s as the card explosion took place. And I think it's more sophisticated today with much more advanced techniques, especially on higher graded or more expensive cards. You know what I mean? And that really has impacted the hobby at the same time. It's not limited to football. It's with all sports,
Without a doubt. Oh, and we could go on and on. You touched on wax packs being resealed, and I bumped into that as well when I went to sell some of my wax, in my sealed boxes, discovering somebody had made fake BBCE shrink wrap and stickers because I had, boxes I'd purchased, and when I went to sell them, when I went to sell them, Steve Hart from BBC reached out to, the person I'd consigned them to and said, that's not my signature on the sticker. So I found out, the boxes that I bought, that I thought had BBC, BBC, had been authenticated by them. I found out that people were even faking those, and it made me shake my head at the hobby. It's like, oh my gosh, I mean, it's tough. I mean, we're not even touching on autographs. The prevalence of fake autographs in the hobby, memorabilia, game-used jerseys. I mean, it's it's a hobby. It's supposed to be fun, but I guess if somebody's willing to pay $1,000 for something, there's always somebody out there who's looking to, be a step ahead of that.
Right. And unfortunately, to me, the long-term impact of it is very negative for the hobby, and that's why in a way, I'm happy what happened with the whole Maestro issue. But again, how quick does the second Maestro come out in the market? And there are many of them, I'm sure.
Wait.
You know what I mean? So
you're absolutely right. I forgot about the Mastro. Yeah, the Mastro thing. I mean, here we have. I mean, we feel like that turtle that's being born that's trying to make it to the ocean, and we've got seagulls and rats trying to pick us off. And then once we make it to the ocean, there's even more stuff, out there. I mean, that's why 1 out of 100 turtles live, I guess. But I mean, here we are. I mean, even if something is authentic and not trimmed and slabbed, now we've got Mastro shilling us up while we're bidding it. I mean, it's just one hurdle, one blockade after another. This poor hobby. It boils down to as cheesy as that Joe Orlando shtick is. never get cheated. I mean, educate yourself.
Right.
If you're going to collect something, educate yourself in it. That's why listening to a podcast like this is important. Being on chat rooms, chat boards, and not being afraid to ask questions.
Yep.
Going to a national and asking people. All important.
Yep. Exactly. All right, moving on to a couple other topics. 2 guests that we have. We'll start first with the very, very incredible collection of photos of Jeff Drum, who we talked about.
Yeah.
And then right after that, Michael Steele, who's a big Boston New England Patriot program collector. We'll start with Jeff and his collection. He was featured as a super collector on our issue number 48, and incredible collection of photos.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, photos. I don't collect a lot of photos except old vintage, Grange and Thorpe photos. But he was a great guest. He was fun and just classy. I love the guests you come up with, and percent of the guests that Bob's, that are on the show are Bob reaching out to people. It's like if Johnny Carson calls you, it's like, well, of course I'll be on the show. I mean, you don't say no to the ambassador of football, Bob Swick.
Well, what's interesting with photos, and I've always said this, there's been a lot of reprints of photos over the years. And again, we're going back to our previous topic. I've only collected, and I don't have a lot. I have a lot of team photos in my collection, but I also have a handful of the old UPI and AP wire photos, which are pretty cool.
Yep.
Especially if you can actually find them with the backing on the back where they have the blurb of what the photo was listed as in the newspaper. And those are pretty neat to collect. I have always enjoyed those. But again, those are tougher and tougher to find. And again, you got to make sure what you're buying is actually, a real photo, to say the least. The other area that I've always loved is programs, and obviously Michael Steele was a great collector to interview with his Patriots program collection. And again, I got to reiterate for the 100th time on the show, back in the 70s, my mom would make us a couple sandwiches, throw a couple cans of soda in a bag, and my buddy and I would drive up to Foxborough, walk up to the gate, buy tickets, and basically sit anywhere we wanted in the stadium because it was half empty all the time. And, we eat our sandwiches in the parking lot. And, again, Foxborough at that time, there was one way in and one way out. You'd park in an old field and walk down a couple miles to the stadium type of thing. And it was a pretty interesting experience. So now the Patriots are gold, and tickets are very hard to come by, yada, yada, yada. It's an interesting contrast, and I always enjoy talking to a collector who, no matter how well or how bad the season was, they continue to collect their, whatever their, team card set, program, yearbook, whatever it may be. They continue in good times and bad times. Yep. And with the Patriots, there were a heck of a lot of bad years compared to good years over the years. So,
truly, Michael's story about the New England, the staff of New England, of the Patriots, reaching out to him to get some of the older programs that they had a gap in.
Right.
And they offered him tickets to, and he took him up on it. He just recently posted up a story about visiting a sideline with press, with a press pass, visiting the sideline of a game that the Patriots invited him to, for giving them copies of the program so that they could display. And it just, as a Seahawk fan, I'm not I shouldn't like the Patriots, but I don't know. I mean, Deflategate, Spygate, all that crap aside, I think the Patriots are a classy organization, and I've always liked them.
Oh yeah.
I mean, does Bill Belichick cheat? Sure, he does. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I think a famous Packer coach said that. So.
Yeah. They're a very upscale organization for their fans. They take care of their fans. I've always felt that when Kraft took over the team, was probably the best thing that ever happened to him. At the same time,
obviously.
And I think that was excellent on their part, and they are fan friendly, to say the least. And again, living in a territory where basically you got Jet fans, you got Giant fans, and you got Patriot fans, it's kind of interesting to see to me, the Patriot fans are very, very dedicated to their team, followed by the Giants and followed by the Jet fans around here locally. So it's very interesting. Then we had a couple of guests who had a military influence. Dan Elsas with his Chick Hartley Ohio State collection, and then Scotty Auten, who and I want to give a shout out to Scotty. He's currently in Iraq on a tour. I kind of I emailed him back and forth during the Army-Navy game that he was watching over there, and it was pretty interesting. And I got to say, the Army-Navy game this year was just great. It was great to watch. It really,
without a doubt,
makes me feel good. It makes me really feel good. I know you're a Navy man, and it just really made me feel good to watch it. A couple of thoughts on Dan's collection of Chick Hartley, and Chick Hartley, and to me, it's just such an incredibly specialized collection, which is so unique and so historical. It's just great. I mean, I always say to myself, if I could just find that one niche, but I don't think I ever could because I'm such a generalized football collector from A to Z. But in his case, he just embraced it, and he's just got an incredible collection of his items, to say the least. Yeah. So
obviously I've got my Steve Largent. It's almost comical, how synonymous my name is with that, with Steve Largent. I mean, and just to meet another collector like Dan Elsas, who is focused on Chick Hartley and Ohio. I mean, he's shown me pictures of his office before. It's just, he's stationed over in Italy. He's in Rome right now. The commander in the Navy. I'm ex-Navy. Excuse me. We both talked about our time on nuclear submarines. Just have a good connection with Dan. Just a great collector, classy guy. Always willing to kind of give information on that stuff, but on his collection. And I do appreciate someone who's found focus like that.
And I will point out, Dan came out to the National in Chicago this past year, and I was very fortunate to grab him the first night he was there, and we ended up having dinner together with Brenda and myself and Eric Stein, one of our other super collectors, and we had a great meal, great time, great conversation too. Scotty, incredible Army-Navy collection, to say the least. Yeah. And I'm so happy I was able to hook up with him and talk to him about it. And again, like he said, once he's back in the States, he'll be contributing a little more back to Gridiron Greats magazine. But his collection is just beyond belief, and something I always enjoyed. I have bought and sold many Army and Navy programs over the years. I've had a lot of people ask me about them, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that actually do collect Army-Navy programs and Army-Navy ticket stubs, and I over the years I've been more than happy to help people out with their collections on them. I think right now I only got a handful of Army-Navy programs left, but it's a great collection, something I highly recommend. And again, you don't have to go from the first issue. I mean, first game. Start in the 40s or the 50s or any time is a great time to collect them. We also had.
I like Scotty. I like Scotty a lot. A decade ago, I'd done trades with him. He also collected the 55 Topps All-American set. And a decade before before he was on the show, he and I had had bought and sold a couple of cards back and forth, and I have our military guys always have a special place in my heart. So I mean, I remember dealing with him from that because I was asking him where he was stationed and what he was up to, and et cetera. And and just it was nice to reconnect with him, all these years later, and just remember how classy he was.
That's good. We also had on our show a stable influence and a stable contributor to Gridiron Greats magazine over the years. Our Reverend Mike Moran, telling stories about his father, Hap Moran. He's such a great collection. I mean, I find that arguably, you're collecting your father's legacy, and what a story that's been. Very, very.
Yeah, I always joke around that you and I are collecting football history. Rev is football history. His family is football history. I mean, I don't know of any other collectors whose father played, in that era of football. I mean, it's just, and it's, I mean, we're, it's walking, talking football history to speak to Rev, and I always appreciate it. I always love it.
Exactly. I've known Mike for many years now, and I have always found he never fails me to find something new and or unfounded that he did find for his father's collection. And I find that truly amazing. And it just shows you, too, how much stuff is actually out there that's still unfound. I hear from several collectors, I can't find anything, blah, blah, blah. And I always say, well, you're not looking. You're not going into the antique shops. You're not going, to a paper show.
Yep.
You're sticking with, let's say eBay or the national card shows or whatever. There's a lot of other areas out there where you can be looking for items and finding items in the long run. And I think they're really out there, one way or the other.
I would honestly say the majority of my very esoteric things in my collection came from my friends in the hobby. I mean, again, I mentioned I'm a big Steve Largent collector. I get texts all the time, texts or emails from people all the time. Hey, did you see this card, this Largent card? 9 times out of 10, I saw it and or I got it. I tell people thank you very much. I appreciate it. But the 1 time out of 10 where it's like I didn't see that, and no, I've never seen that item before. That to me is how you get those oddball items. You spread your wings in the hobby. You get friends, and you let people know what you're collecting, and those people look out for each other. I know what my friends collect, and if I saw something that they were collecting, I'd definitely give them a heads up. So I mean, that's so suddenly you just multiply the eyes and ears out there, on the ground looking for what you're collecting.
Exactly, and that also leads us into our Green Bay Packers super collector, Scott Walters. Scott, I met at the National this past year. It was funny. He came up to the table. He said, are you Bob Swick? I said, yeah. And he said, I subscribed to your magazine, said his name, and I knew right away I recognized the name right away because we had emailed each other back and forth on some Packer items. And what a great story he has with regards to the Packers history that he collects and what he has in his collection.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to Rev real quick. When he was telling his story about driving while his dad and somebody were driving the car and they were drinking, and that who was that he was talking about? Was it? I forget. I jotted down my notes, on our agenda that he was talking about
Scott.
Somebody.
Who? Oh boy. I don't know. I got to think about that. I remember that story. Yeah. I'll have to reach out to him and ask, but I just remember that. But yeah, Packers super collector. I remember that well because I think the Seahawks had just beaten the Packers, in football, and so I was riding a high that that week. A very smug, glum. My team just beat your team high, and look at both of us. We're both going to miss the playoffs probably. So look where that got me. But yeah, that was obviously very close to your heart. A disaster of a year for the Packers and Packer fans, to say the least. And again, as I commented to two people I knew who were Packer fans, I told them straight out, you're the backup to one of the number 1 quarterbacks in the NFL. You have no room for error, and you have no room to make a mistake on the field. You have to be perfect. You know what I mean? Because you never know, as a backup, if you're going to be out there or not. And that's simple. And again, I'll give him some benefit of the doubt because the line has been really injured most of the season. It hasn't been a good year for them in any way, shape, or form. And they don't go out and get players either. They do it their way. So, you're going to suffer through a 500 season here and there and type of thing. But it also shows to me Rodgers is not going to be Superman. He's not going to be a Brady. playing in his 40s type of thing. So
yeah,
it's going to be
what I remember about
tough haul.
Yeah, exactly. What I remember about that Packer Super Collector guest is just you two. You two, Green Bay Packer fans just talking and talking and talking. I think I could have gone out for a sandwich in the latter part of that show and not missed a beat. Just the two of you talking about Packers, and I've said this 100 times. I've got the best seat in the house, being the co-host of this show, and some of the guests that get brought on, and just hearing you're walking, talking football history as well, Bob, like it or not. I mean, hearing the two of you talk about Packers and collecting and items you collect, it was fun.
Yeah, he was a great guest. But I'll tell you, our next guest right after him was our postal serial super collector, Robin Pauls. What a unbelievable show! And I'll also put in a plug. That was one of our most listened to shows of the podcast. It was amazing. He is just he is post serial sports cards, baseball and football.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah. We're both friends with Kirk Robinson, who also collects the post serial.
Right.
And I posed the question: who would win the death cage match? Like a Jeopardy style death cage match. Over post serial, and Kirk chimed in a little later on a chat room you and I belong to that it wouldn't even be close, that Robin would smoke him. And he said Robin knows more about this set than probably the people who created it.
I thought I knew a little bit about the short prints and the double prints. I knew nothing after what I saw him come up with. And I went through some of my I have a handful of duplicates that I went through my regular 200 card collection of the 62 post set. And I said to myself, this is just mind-boggling to me to see what he came up with and all the different variations on it, and how he encaptured to me the real history of the 62 post serial set. I mean, it's just amazing to me, truly amazing. And
you want to talk about? Go for it. I mentioned earlier, I collected the 48 Leaf set. I feel like I'd immersed myself in the 48 Leaf set. That's 13 years worth of 12, 13 years worth of collecting one set. Robin had been putting this together, for I don't even remember how long he said, but I mean, there's a whole different level of collecting, to the point where you probably know more about the issue than the people who created it. Sometimes I wish we could go back in time and Robin could, meet the people who put this together. Like, hey, did you know that there's a variation of the photo in this and this? And the guy'd be like, I had no idea. I guess the printer messed that up. I mean, it'd be fascinating to talk to them. They'd probably laugh at us for getting this down into nuances of a certain set.
Right, and in that case, though, to me, a lot of the different variations are very legitimate variations because they were on,
without a doubt,
different serial packages, different size packages, so on and so forth. So to me, there's a lot of interest in that because, again, historically, they issued these cards on their cereal boxes, but they had different brands and types of cereal boxes. So therefore, that is, to me, a very, realistic variation, not, a print error where ink got smudged or whatever. You know what I mean? And I never bought, right, in the 90s, all the Pro Set variations. I mean, they were stupid as far as I was concerned. They're printing errors.
Yes.
That's all they are. And,
no, you're right, and I would agree with you.
But the post-serial variations, to me, are realistic variations. I mean, they are.
You're spot on.
They are matched to the boxes,
I spent probably 45 minutes going through Robin's website just looking at the variations. And like you said, the tip of the iceberg of my knowledge of the set, I agree with you. I go back to the Leaf set because it's the one I know. And you're right. A lot of the variations, quote unquote, in that set are printing errors. It's, maroon jersey versus red jersey on Grange, white between the knees versus black between the knees.
Right.
I mean, a lot of these are print errors. Brown helmet versus tan helmet. And I'm pretty sure if we brought these variations to the printers, they'd say, okay, well, we ran a bunch of sheets with this ink, and then we got another batch of ink in, and we just poured it in. And all right, so I guess that one was a little bit lighter, and it came back with a tan helmet, brown helmet. Really? Move out of your parents' basements, and get a life. To quote
exactly.
To quote William Shatner.
Exactly.
So
we also had Chris Willis on the show, and incredible book that he wrote on Jim Thorpe, which actually Jeff Payne reviewed the book. It's going to be in this coming issue of Gridiron Greats magazine. Chris is good friend of Gigi. Known Chris for many years. Chris actually wrote for my old Football Times newsletter back in the 90s when he was a grad student. And he's just got an amazing ability to capture very, very interesting facts about something, especially obviously dealing with football, and writing a book on it, which was truly amazing.
Yep. Boy, and talk about the resume to back it up. I mean, working with the NFL like he does, just having access to that.
Right.
I mean, just
truly.
Yeah. I mean,
he
immersed in history.
A dream. He has a dream job too. For anybody who doesn't know, he's the head of the he's the head of the research department at NFL Films, and so that's got to be amazing. I mean, that would be my kind of job.
So
I would walk in
access to the material. Every day, like you said, access to Chris has access to material. He's immersed in it. He's part of it.
Right.
I mean, how could you not, just eventually start writing books, and following up on this? He mentioned in the show, didn't he, that he was coming out with who was it? Another book, wasn't it? Like Don Hudson or?
Yeah, he's working on that now. And I don't know when his I forgot what he said his publication date is going to be. I want to say it was going to be 18 or 19. So he's working on that. He's doing the concepts on it right now. But I'm sure that's going to be an excellent book to read too. And I never realized too, again, especially a lot of the older Packer players, I really thought there was a lot written. There really wasn't a lot written one way or the other. So that should be a great book to come out with.
Great guest.
We also talked to John Spano came back on a later show, and you and I talked about this actually prior to asking him about it. What he feels the most expensive rare football item that could ever come to auction. Give me some background on that, because I know it's
you and I have talked about six-figure football collectibles,
right?
Because you've got the Honus Wagner, you've got the Babe Ruth cards in baseball. What are the most expensive football cards? And we've talked about it, off air, quite a bit, in chat rooms, etc. So I just asked John, what would be the most expensive football item that could ever come to auction? I mean, real or imaginary? And he had a pretty interesting reply.
And
that's your cue,
I think I missed it. I'm sorry. And,
call that a segue.
If you have the T206 of football, the Honus Wagner card of football, we argued about this for a long time. I've been arguing about that for probably 5 years now. And when he came up with what you picked up on pretty much, because it's up your alley more than anything, a game-used Jim Thorpe jersey that actually has the province of the piece itself. Is that really in existence? Can it be in existence? Can any real uniform jersey still be out there from, let's say, the 1920s or the 30s type of thing? And that's
a very good question.
That's the real tough part of trying to understand, of trying to figure out, okay, what is the most rare cards? Okay, you could argue all day as far as cards are concerned, and I've said this many times, the Dunlop card, the anonymous card of the Mayo set, is probably one of the rarest cards. But unfortunately, or fortunately, they're out there. You just got to have enough money to buy it, type of situation.
Absolutely.
But at the same
Yep.
At the same time, there's a lot of obscure. You look at the Shotwells, you look at the Spaldings. Those are in a lot of cases probably one of twos, one of threes, one of fours that are actually there that are going nowhere fast in people's collection, type of situation. So if we argue again a jersey from that kind of a player with that kind of historical background, that could probably be, the most expensive item ever out there for football memorabilia.
Think about the most famous picture of Thorpe. It's him playing for the Canton Bulldogs, standing on the side of the field, hands on hips akimbo, looking at the picture. I mean, that is the most popular picture of Jim Thorpe. Agree?
Right.
It's the one you see a lot of. Imagine if that Canton Bulldog jersey had a tear or a smudge or a patch on it, and that jersey came to auction, and it's like, and it had, his name on it, et cetera, et cetera. If it could be proved that the jersey in that Canton Bulldog picture was the jersey coming up, and it was in halfway decent shape, that has some firepower behind it.
It would be incredible. It would be an incredible piece. And again, putting it in perspective, how do people spend $10,000-$15,000 on a modern card, which is in theory a 101, and then they have no conceptualization of the true historical value of some of the items that come to the market? It's just beyond me. It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
At the end of the day, Captain, we all collect pictures of men in tights on cardboard. I'm not going to wag a finger at somebody else who collects modern versus me. We all suffer from the same mental illness. So,
All right,
There's somebody who doesn't collect, who meets me and goes, "You collect football cards, huh?" I mean, so we're all odd from the outside. So
right, exactly. Well, while you were away, we had Jeff Payne filled in. I had one show. Jeff talked about his collection, which is pretty incredible. And then we also had super collector Mike Rich on the show talking about his collection. And again, like I said on that show, Mike and I go back many, many years trading cards. We traded cards without the precise value of cards being exchanged one way or the other. That's something unique about Mike. Mike's an old-time collector, old-fashioned collector, kind of like me, where you traded cards, and, if the trade was in your favor, okay, excuse me, down the road you would find something you'd send me or whatever, type of situation. I've traded with a lot of people over the years. I had one guy that used to drive me crazy because he had the exact book value for every card precisely in the condition it was in, so on and so forth. And I would just say to him, if that's what you feel it's worth, that's fine with me. I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to even bother looking up the card value type of situation. And again, it goes back to shows back in the early 80s, which a lot of people don't realize. You go to a table. A superstar was a quarter. Up-and-coming rookie was maybe 10 cents. Commons were always a nickel. And older vintage superstars may have been 50 cents or $1 type of situation. That's the way it was back then. And, dealers made a pretty, did well for selling a lot of cards. A lot more people collected sets back then than they do today. So, therefore, there was a lot of people looking for actual numbers of cards, so on and so forth. And I think that's more important in the hobby right now, especially with all the different box breaks that go on and all that. So Mike's definitely a serious throwback to a different time in collecting.
You have a story of a card show where somebody walked in and sold a collection of football and baseball to a baseball dealer, and he didn't know what to do with the football, so he's walking out to the dumpster to throw them away, and you intercepted him. He's like, "I don't know how to sell these. I'm just chucking them."
There's too many times I would go to the show and I would ask if they had any football cards, and they would look around, so nobody else was seeing anything going on. He'd go into his box in the back of the table or whatever, pull out a cheese box, and he says, "Give me $5 for this." And that's all I got, type of thing. I would rarely ever see football cards on a table. So I would always have to ask, you know, do you have any football cards type of thing? And then all of a sudden, in 1988, 89, I was everybody's best friend because football started to get hot. And, okay, I could use some 1950s cards. Can you give me a deal on them, like a nickel a card or whatever type of thing? And I just found great irony in the whole market at that time, seeing what happened.
Yeah.
But in the good old days that I you know, went to shows, it was tough to find football cards, to say the least. So, and it was also equally tough for anybody who collected hockey or basketball cards because they just weren't there. Baseball was the king, and you know, and that was it type of situation.
Still is, yeah.
All right,
still is. I think, and talk about classic old trades. You know, Jeff Payne and our buds, and he and I just completed a trade. I gave him some star player candy cards, and he gave me some Pottsville Maroon postcards. So he and I both noted it was like being on the old school bus trading cards out of your lunch pail. So, well, all right, you give me 3 of those, and I'll give you 2 of these. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a great trade while I was away, which is pretty cool.
That's good. That's good. That's what, you know, that's the way the hobby was. People don't realize that, to say the least.
Yeah.
We got a couple more points as we're winding down time here. Next year's National is going to be in Cleveland, and I remember the last time I was in Cleveland for the National, it was very interesting for me to say the least. So this year's National.
Can you elaborate on that, Captain?
It was. I felt like I went back in time where I was staying. Naturally, where the convention center is pretty much away from Cleveland itself. So I stayed at a Best Western, which was near the convention center. The town that it was in, which obviously is a suburb of Cleveland, I don't even know what the town was, or if it was Cleveland per se. It just reminded me of going back in time. You know, there was no restaurants there, nothing was open. You know, you go back to your room at night, and that was it. You know, that type of situation. So it was very interesting. So I think this year,
people in Detroit make fun of Cleveland. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and this year I think I'm going to look to staying downtown area where there seems to be life after dark, and either take a taxi to the show or whatever, or I may drive out there one way or the other. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Chicago this past year was Chicago. Rosemont, obviously, nice area, a lot of stuff going on. Very interesting show, to say the least. Cleveland should be a little different because there are some different dealers that go there. There'll be some different material to see. I did comment at the Cleveland show. I ran into a guy who, I think he just moved his collection of Cleveland Browns cards and he brought it to the show. And he was trying to sell certain things. I never have seen the organization of a table like his. He had binder upon binder of Cleveland Brown cards, and I mean literally every insert, every newer card, like 89 up type of thing. Incredible display that he had. I don't know how well or how poorly he did, but it was amazing to see and watch there, to say the least. So, are you planning on coming out? The $1 million question every year.
I will. I wish it wasn't in Cleveland, because if it was in Baltimore, Chicago, it'd make the decision easy. I just I love the people. I really wish I would have made it to the last one. You know, Dan Elsass was there. Honestly,
yeah.
I go for the people. I go for the people. I've shown up there on a Thursday before or Wednesday and not even made it to the National for like a day and a half. Not even walked the floor.
Right.
I'm just spending so much time with people. I will call the ball on that, Captain, and get back to you. I need to figure out. Yeah. We'll see. But
all right. Our last topic, and then I'm going to hand it off to you. Next year's collecting wants and needs. You got anything on your want list you're looking for or whatever? And I'll give you a couple ideas what I'm looking for.
You know, I want to focus my collection. I just consigned a couple more cards, to Al Crispalli at Love of the Game. He was, doing his West Coast tour, and I met him at my house, handed some stuff. I'm trying to focus it down. I used to be kind of all over in what I collected, and I've really narrowed it down lately. I sold my Nagurski a couple years ago I just had an offer I couldn't refuse, per se.
Mm-hmm,
I want to find another Nagurski. I feel like my collection isn't complete, without a Nagurski in there. I feel like a hypocrite.
Well,
how about you, Captain?
No. When you get an offer for an item in your collection that's unbelievable, you got to take it. I've always said that from day one. As far as what I'm looking at, I still don't know. And again, I'm stuck on a couple of different paths. One, making a much better attempt to get some one-on-one of oddball and insert cards pre-1988 and back for my collection. I'm also pretty stagnant on my Mayos. I always say I try to pick up at least a couple a year. I have over half the set in the SGC 20 and 30. I've seen a lot of cards came to the market, in my opinion, in 17. I bid on several of them. I got outbid on them because I just didn't think they were worth the grade type of thing. And I really don't want to overgrade the set either. I don't want to buy 50s and 60s when I only have 20s and 30s. You know what I mean? And vice versa. Totally. And I don't want any 10s either. Although I've seen some 10s that look like 30s, that type of situation. Yep. So I'm gonna mill around with that. I'm also gonna mill around with deciding what I'm gonna do with my 52 Bowman starter set that I have. If I should I started and stopped that set probably 4 different times now. So I really got to decide what I want to do with it. I'm leaning again unloading what I have in it, but I don't know yet. I'll have to see.
You're a completionist.
And now I'm going to hand off.
You're a completionist, Bob. You got to hit the finish line.
Yeah, I know. That's what a lot of people have told me. So now there's a handful of oddball stuff that I'm still looking for. Including the 65 Topps Magic Emblem inserts. I need 3 more of those to finish the set. And those are just, I don't understand. I just can't find them. I see them at the National. They're not the ones I need. And this is just amazing to me. All right, we're down to only a few more minutes. Joe, I'm going to hand off to you.
I just wanted to wrap up the show by saying thank you, Bob, for reviving the the podcast. I don't think a lot of our listeners realize how much effort goes in behind the scenes, that Bob puts on with this. Getting guests together. I want to get a picture of where you sit to do the show, because you've mentioned it's a console, etc. But I wouldn't mind seeing where you sit to do the show, because I do mine pretty easily on my end. Just getting guests, getting scripts together. Also publicating Gridiron Greats, which is our hobby, anthem. Bob, you are the ambassador to our football. I just wanted to thank you for reviving the show. I remember when you reached out to me again, and you're like, hey, I want to get the band back together. And I was sending you pictures of Ed McMahon and, Jeffrey Tambor, as jokes. But, I joke around. I do have the best seat in the house, just for this show, and I love being involved with the hobby. You make me more involved in the hobby, and I do love that. And we call you a lot of names. The ambassador of football, the captain, and I just my favorite is just you're my friend, Bob, and I love being involved in this podcast with you, and I just wanted to say thanks.
Well, Joe, I appreciate the kind words, and again, I appreciate you being a co-host. I think we have a unique chemistry being on the show together, and I've had many very positive comments with regards to having you back as a co-host. Obviously, because this is not our full-time work, we obviously have other obligations. You're a busy guy. You're a business owner. You've got a lot going on, so I do appreciate the time you take out of your busy schedule to come on the show, and the time you do spend on the hobby too, because again, we only have, as I tell people, 24 hours in the day, and that's really not enough time to do everything that needs to be done type of situation. And it's interesting. I will promise though for 2018 to send you some photos of the man cave, because I had a new floor put in there. I've had a lot of stuff redone in the room. I had a minor flood in the man cave earlier this year, and I had some pipe work out to be done, and it was kind of a mess to say the least. So I had to move everything out. I'm in the process of restoring and putting things back in where they should be, type of situation. Again, one thing I tell people, I have about 400 books on football in my collection, and I have a large bookcase that I have all the books in, and I really got to reorganize it because it's a mess right now. I have to move a lot of stuff off a couple shelves when I have to move everything around. But I will promise that, and again, I want to wrap up by saying thanks for listening. We're sponsored in part by MSB Sports Cards. Check out their website, msbsportscards.com, and BSC Auctions. Check out their website, bscauctions.com, for their latest and upcoming auctions. Joe, we'll be talking in 2018, and I want to thank all our listeners
Merry
for
New
listening.
Year, Ken.
We'll be back. Happy New Year, Joe, and Happy New Year from Football History and Memorabilia. Take care.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.